Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. My name is Nick Cosgrove and I am back with this week's No Filter Q&A. This is the episode where I answer all questions related to diet, training, and supplementation I received over the last 7 days from our in-house clients, online clients, as well as a few of our online followers. Remember, if any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you are currently taking, not taking, or considering taking, please feel free to email me those questions at nick@foreverfitperformance.com, or you can DM me your questions on my Instagram at fitcosgrove_. All right, let's get started with this week's no filter Q&A with question number 1. Nick, why do my arms refuse to grow no matter how many curls I throw into my arm workouts? Because arms need to be worked on both your biceps and your triceps. And more importantly, you should be prioritizing your triceps over your biceps if you're lacking that arm development. Okay, you have to remember your triceps have three heads. Your biceps only have two heads. So your triceps make up about 70% of the arm. All right, your biceps only make up 30%. So you want to make sure that you are prioritizing your triceps with, you can do rope extensions, narrow bar press downs, V bar press downs, overhead rope extensions, dips, right? You can do dumbbell kickbacks, skull crushers. These are all fundamental exercises for you to create proper tricep development. In my opinion, too many people, especially men who always want to get their arms bigger, focus too much on biceps and not enough on triceps. And what happens is their biceps become overdeveloped and their triceps become underdeveloped. And this gives you the illusion of a smaller arm. Okay. Because again, if you're prioritizing the part that's only 30% of your arm and neglecting the 70%, or not training the 70% with enough intensity, enough volume, enough sets, enough reps, guess what? You're only going to have a 30% arm. So you want to make sure you're prioritizing your tricep work. What I find works well for most people is if you superset your arms and give them a combination of cables, dumbbells, barbells, easy bar. So you're hitting every different piece of equipment. You're using different angles. Sometimes I'll do curls laying down. Sometimes I'll do them up against the wall. Sometimes I'll do press downs with a cable. Sometimes I'll do skull crushers on an incline. So I'm really trying to maximize my angles, right? And that way I can hit every portion of my brachialis, hit my long head, my short head of the bicep, and hit my upper head, my side head, my back head of my tricep. Okay. So, in my opinion, a good arm workout should consist of at least 4 exercises for the biceps and 4 to 5 exercises for the triceps. Okay. So I guarantee you that if you prioritize those triceps and give them just a little bit more work, you'll notice more detail in your overall arm development. It's the same thing I say to, and again, women are guilty of this too, but men especially. A lot of men tend to overtrain their chest, right? The show muscle. They'll do bench presses. They'll do incline bench press, flat bench press, decline bench press. They'll do cable flies, dumbbell flies. And then they might do 1 or 2 exercises for their back. Oh, I don't see my back. And what happens, they get an overdeveloped chest and underdeveloped back. So they start to round forward. Okay, you see this all the time. And this creates problems down the road. Never mind for muscular imbalances, it can create potential physical limitations, injuries, and so on. Plus, it looks stupid. So you want to make sure that in order to develop a symmetrical looking physique, that you work all the muscles in accordance. All right. And if you have weaker muscle groups or muscle groups that are lagging, you prioritize them more. So in your case, even though I don't work with you, I can guarantee you that if you're looking at your arms, well, they're just looking small or just not looking defined, you're probably neglecting your triceps. Focus on your triceps. Don't ignore your biceps, but give a little bit more focus and detail to your triceps. Try some of those exercises that I've listed off, okay? The dumbbell kickbacks, the incline skull crushers, tricep rope extensions, tricep overhead rope extensions, narrow bar press downs, V bar press downs, even do some unilateral cable work so you're working each side independently. And you'll notice that your arms not only look bigger, but they look better, okay? Because it's not just about size, it's not just about the quantity, right? It's the quality. You want that lean, dense muscle belly, right? You want some definition. You don't just want big arms, all right? So if you want to create quality looking arms, do not neglect your triceps. It's a big mistake made by so many people. All right. Okay. Nick, I feel like I'm getting softer on my bulk. How do I know when it's too much fat gain? Good rule of thumb I always used when I was trying to put on size in the off season was as soon as I could no longer see my abs, I knew I was in trouble. So I always wanted to see my abs, especially in the morning. You know, at the end of the day, maybe I'm holding a little bit more food, especially if I'm in a caloric surplus. I'm having 7 or 8 meals a day. I'm drinking a lot of water. I might not see my abs. But I should always see my abs first thing in the morning when I wake up. I'm dehydrated. I haven't eaten for 8 hours. And so my rule of thumb was as soon as I could no longer see my abs, I started to back down on the calories. Okay. So whether that was taking down my carbs, my fats, my protein, or all three. All right. So that's the rule of thumb you should be using, in my opinion, with bulking. If you can no longer see the outline of your abdominal region, then it's time to scale back on the calories or incorporate more cardio. All right. Now, if you're sitting there going, well, I can never see my abs, well, then you should not be bulking. Okay. That means that your body fat is too high. Because I always tell all my clients, like, especially my clients who compete, or even my clients who don't compete, who just want to build more muscle, I'm like, look, you always, and I made a post about this earlier today, you always want to stay within striking distance of a low body fat. I don't want to say competition physique, but somewhat low body fat, like a aesthetically pleasing physique, right? So you don't want to become one of those people that bulks and then you get all puffy and you're holding water and your face looks big and it doesn't look good. Okay. It looks like a bloated mess. So you always want to stay relatively lean and within striking distance of, if you had to get ready for a beach vacation or a photo shoot or a competition, you could do it in 6 weeks. Okay, so you don't allow yourself to get sloppy. So if you follow that rule of thumb and you say, okay, I want to put on size, but I've got to be careful here. So I'm going to make sure that I'm monitoring how I'm looking, paying very close attention to what I'm eating. And if you do feel like, hey, you put on fat really easily, throw some cardio into your bulking season. Even though, like, for example, I just did a competition this past weekend, I'm still doing cardio. I'm still doing 20 minutes of cardio a day. Before I was doing an hour and a half of cardio a day, but now that I'm no longer trying to lean out for a show, I'm backing off the cardio, incorporating more calories again, but I'm still doing cardio. Okay. Because I don't want to, all that hard work I just put into a competition, I don't want to lose that look within a week. Right. So I'm still doing my cardio, and cardio is good for you too. So I think everyone should do some form of cardio. I think walking is great. Just even if it's like 20, 30 minutes a day, it's good for your cardiovascular system. It actually will help you with your resistance training sessions. I notice people who do cardio on a regular basis, they don't rest as long between sets. I know for me, like 45 seconds max is how long I rest between sets. And that includes when I'm squatting heavy weights, like 315, doing drop sets, quadruple drop sets. And I really attributed that to all the cardio that I do on a regular basis. So I think it's so important to do it on, it doesn't have to be daily, but at least 3 to 4 times a week. I think you're making a big mistake if you're not doing cardio of some sort. And like I said, it doesn't have to be on a treadmill, it doesn't have to be on an elliptical trainer, or it doesn't have to be on a stationary bike. It could just be outside walking, but get yourself moving. Okay. It's good for your heart health, and it's also going to be good for your muscular system. All right. Okay. Nick, I'm eating clean, but not growing. What am I probably doing wrong? You're most likely not eating enough. All right. Now, if you're like me, I would call myself an ectomorph, someone who's always struggled to put on weight. I've always had a very fast metabolism. Well, I shouldn't say always, but ever since a teenager, I've had a crazy fast metabolism. So I have to eat a lot of food just to put on muscle. So if you're doing 1 scoop of protein powder, you most likely need to do 2 scoops of protein powder. If you're doing 1 cup of rice, you probably need to do 2 cups of rice. And I know it's hard for a lot of people, especially people who have a hard time eating. Like I have some of my clients like I just can't eat all that food. I'm like, look, if you want to get bigger and you want to put on quality size muscle, you have to find a way to get those calories in. You have to. All right. So I don't want to hear, oh no, I can't do it. Well, if you can't do it, then you don't want it. Period. Okay. Because if you truly want to put on size, it can't be like, oh, I can't eat that or I don't have time for this. I'm like, okay, well then you truly don't want it. Just admit you don't want it. You don't want it bad enough that you're not willing to work for it. All right. You have to eat. Okay. And I know it sounds like such a cliche when you hear to get big, you have to eat big, but it is true. You do have to eat a lot of food in order to feed those muscles for protein synthesis. Okay. You can't grow muscle if you eat like a bird. All right. So you can't look like a horse if you're eating like a bird. Right. So you got to build that muscle and you have to fill it with nutrients. So you want to make sure that you're maxing out your protein, maxing out your complex carbohydrates and your healthy fats. And that's going to allow your body to grow. All right. And remember, if you are someone like me, which I would call a hard gainer, you don't really have to worry about fat gain. Because to be honest, I can eat tons of food and I don't really put on fat. But again, if I wasn't working out every day, I didn't have an active job, I probably would put on some body fat. So that's why I always tell people too, if you are worried about putting on body fat, use that rule of thumb I answered in the last question. Always keep an eye on that midsection. Okay. If it's starting to look a little sloppy, if you're losing the outline of your abdomen region, back off the calories or incorporate more cardio. Okay. But it's not like you're going to wake up and one day just be this fat person. That doesn't happen like that. Okay. Fat gain comes on slowly. All right. So you want to make sure you're monitoring what you're doing with your diet. And if what you're doing right now is not working, change it. All right. So my recommendation is if you're eating clean, that's great. Keep eating clean, but add more. All right. So like I said, if you're having one scoop of protein powder, have two. If you're having one cup of rice, try a cup and a half. Okay. Start slowly. If you're doing, let's say, 3 eggs a day, bring it up to five. All right. And see how that works for your body. Because I tell you what, if you do that on a consistent basis, I don't just mean do it for 2 days and then stop for 5 days and do it for 3 days and stop for 2 weeks. You do it every day for a month, 3 months, 6 months to a year, you will put on weight and you'll put on good quality weight as long as you're training properly and you're making sure, again, you're getting enough rest so that you can train correctly in the gym and you can train with the utmost amount of intensity. All right. Okay. Nick, how do I stop comparing my physique to guys on social media who look insane year round? Yeah, I talked about this last week on the channel, and here's the thing with social media. You only see the highlight reels, right? People can filter their photos. People can put photos up in black and white. They can shadow things. They give themselves abs now with chat GPT images and all this nonsense. And the thing is, you don't really, I mean, some people put up unfiltered photos, but I feel that more and more people these days are putting up just the highlight reels. So you're not seeing them at their worst. And I mentioned, like, how often do you see someone taking a photo of their belly hanging out, right? You don't. So it's really important to keep that in mind if you are someone who finds yourself constantly comparing yourself to others. When I used to, not this last show, but even like back in 2018, 2017, when Instagram was getting bigger and bigger, I remember seeing competitors who I was going up against in shows, and I would constantly be looking at their Instagrams and comparing myself, oh my God, I'm going to lose to this person. And then when I would see them in person, and I'm not trying to talk badly about these people, I'm just saying that when I see them in person, they're a shadow of what they were showing on the social media. They look anything like that because they were filtering, they had the best lighting. Maybe they were taking a photo first thing in the morning when they looked their best. And now I'm seeing them at a show, it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon. They've had a few meals, maybe they don't look their best. So it's really important to keep that in mind. But most importantly, you really shouldn't be comparing yourself to others anyway. And I've always used the analogy as like, I'm in a competition with myself. I don't really care who shows up to the competitions I do. Even this competition I did this past weekend, I could care less who showed up. I wanted to do it for me. I wanted to look my best. I can't control who shows up to the show. I can't control what the judges decide. I'm just going to show the best package that I can bring to the stage and look my best. And that's a win for me. Okay. So it's not about, comparing yourself and going, well, I'll never look like that. Or, that person, I don't know, they're probably using drugs or the genetics or they had the best coach or they're using the best supplements. No. Okay. You got to stop. Just focus on what you can do with your genetics. Approach your workouts methodically, train intelligently, eat correctly, and you will achieve results with your health and your physique. Okay. And lastly, if you are someone who finds yourself constantly comparing yourself to others on social media, log off. Get off of it. You don't need to be on it. I talked about how once I'm out of this industry, when I retire, I'm gone. You will never see me online again. There's no reason for me to be online. No Instagram, no Facebook, no Snapchat, no TikTok, no LinkedIn. Okay. I'm on social media purely for my business and I don't compare myself to others. And I think that's important is, you have to develop tunnel vision, focus on what you're doing, whether it's with your business, whether it's with your health, whether it's with your physique, whatever it may be, and don't compare yourself to others. All right. Because there's always going to be someone who's doing better than you in life. They're making more money or they're building more muscle or they're losing more fat. Always. Okay. But you're also out there, you're someone who's also going to be building more muscle, losing more fat, and making more money than someone else, right? So someone might look at you on your social media and go, wow, why can't I be like this person? So, I think it's important to not compare yourself to others. And if you are using social media as a platform for your business, or are you just like using social media to connect with friends and family members? I would try to be using it in a positive way, to motivate others to do better, live a healthier lifestyle, be active, and just enjoy their life and not get caught up in this constantly comparing yourself to other people because that again is a slippery slope and it's a good way to demotivate yourself to go to the gym or it's like, I'm never going to look like that. I'm just going to have that burger and fries. And you kind of like a self-sabotage. All right. So, like I said, social media has its pros and its cons, but for some people, they probably shouldn't be on it. And if you're one of those people, log off. All right. Nick, is training 5 to 6 days a week really necessary in order to build muscle? It's not necessary, but in my opinion, you're going to build more muscle. You're going to burn more fat and you're going to develop the more aesthetically pleasing physique the more time you spend in the gym. All right. Now, I don't mean time as in spending 2 to 3 hours in the gym per session. I mean the more time frequency you go to the gym. So if you're going to the gym 4 to 6 times a week and your workouts are 45 minutes, but you're going all out, you're focusing, you got tunnel vision, you're not talking to people, you're not checking Instagram, you're not taking selfies, you're going to get results. But if you're that same person who's going to the gym 4, 5, 6 days a week and you're taking 5 minute rest periods in between sets, you're talking to people at the gym, you're scrolling through TikTok and you're cruising Instagram, no, you're not going to get results. So it's what you do in the gym. Okay. But yes, if you're putting more effort into something, of course you're going to get a better ROI. Like, obviously, I mean, I use the analogy if you're building a business. You can't build a business working on it once a week. You've got to work on it every day. Okay. If you want to see something grow, you've got to work on it. All right. So same thing with your body. If you want to see results with your physique, you've got to be consistent. Okay. So you can't say, oh, no matter what I do, I'm not putting on muscle. But you look back in the last month and you only went to the gym 4 or 5 times. Of course, you're not putting on muscle. How are you going to put on muscle if you're going out of 30 days, if you're going to the gym 4 or 5 of those days of the month? That's nothing. Okay. And same thing with your diet. If you say, oh, yeah, I can't lose this fat no matter what I do, I'm eating clean. If you're only eating clean, well, your version, whatever your version of clean is, 50% of the time, and you're shitting the bed on your diet the other 50% of the time, going to Chipotle's, going to McDonald's, constantly ordering out takeout, no, then no, you're not going to see results. So you've got to be dedicated to the process. You have to be consistent to the progress as well. So the process, I should say. So, the dedication and the consistency is key, day in, day out. Okay. Little changes equate to big changes, but you have to be consistent. And I always stress the importance of the consistency because I feel that that is the number one thing that people lack when it comes to transforming their physique is the consistency factor. People get motivated for 5 minutes. They see a YouTube video or they see someone post up competitions from a bodybuilding photo or whatever it is, and they get really motivated. Like, I can do this. I want to do this. And then they don't realize, like, yeah, but you have to have a game plan because there's going to come a time where you're not going to want to have salmon and rice. You're going to want a burger and fries. You're going to want that pizza. You know what I mean? You're going to want that slice of chocolate cake. What are you going to do when that time comes? So you have to plan around that. And that's where it's so important to meal prep. So you're not just ravaging for food when you get home. That's why it's so important to structure your workouts so you know when you go into the gym exactly what you're training so you're not wandering around aimlessly in the gym and making sure that you're on a set schedule so you're getting at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night and that you're drinking at least 2 to 4 liters of water a day because that day in day out equates to bigger changes. I've talked about before, like if you're on like let's say a 6 meal plan, you miss 2 of those meals one day. Maybe you're really busy with work. All right. Or maybe you're just hungover and you're lazy. You don't feel like meal prepping. I'm just going to have 4 meals, skip a meal. That's going to translate to the next day in the gym. Okay, you've skipped a meal. Maybe you're not going to feel as good. You're not going to be able to lift as heavy. The transition of the weight's going to feel different. Now it impacts your workout. Now your workout suffers. Maybe you're not lifting as much weight, so now you're not putting on as much muscle. Okay, now you're not putting on as much muscle. Maybe it's easier to put on body fat. So the two go hand in hand, the diet and the training. And I do throw in rest and hydration in that too, because you need to stack all four and it needs to be done on a consistent basis. All right. So you have to dedicate yourself to the process if you truly want to transform your physique and improve your overall health and well being. All right. Nick, is there such a thing as bad genetics or just bad work ethic and poor habits? I don't believe there's such a thing as bad genetics, but obviously some people have better genetics than others. And, I brought up the comparison last week with Michael Jordan and Sidney Crosby and these major athletes, right? Sports athletes, Alex Ovechkin, Tiger Woods. And, these guys all have great work ethic. They do. They have natural born talent though as well. And that's from their genetics, their DNA. All right. So yeah, it's not good to compare yourself to people like that because they're the genetic elite and they just happen to find a sport or whatever their craft that they excel in. right? There's people like that in business too. People who are very smart the way they think. They think very methodically, right? Why is not everyone out there a multi-millionaire? Some people just self-made, right? They think differently. That's in their DNA. It's in their genetics. And you stack good genetics or great genetics with a amazing work ethic, and you do have a Michael Jordan, right? So that's something that you can't take away from someone. Their genetics, that's what they're born with. But if you're born with what you say shitty genetics or poor genetics, you need to learn to work with your genetics and say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to be able to play basketball like a Jordan. I'm not going to be able to play hockey like a Crosby. I'm not going to be able to play golf like a Tiger Woods. Okay. I might not have the most intelligent mind like a Bill Gates, but I can work with my genetics and I can find what I'm good at. Okay. Like for myself, I've done bodybuilding shows and I'm a decent bodybuilder, but am I IFB bro status? Absolutely not. No. I know my genetics. Okay. I knew after my first bodybuilding show, I knew my limitations, but that didn't stop me from bodybuilding. I still love bodybuilding. I still do it. I teach it. I've made a career out of it. I made a business out of it. Okay. But I don't look like a professional bodybuilder, but I understand what it takes to build muscle and to lose fat. I've educated myself on that. So rather than say, well, I'll never be a professional bodybuilder, what's the point? I've got shitty genetics. I'm like, no, I got decent genetics that I can work with them. And yeah, I might have to work a little harder than someone who can just get shredded from playing PlayStation. I might have to do an hour and a half cardio in order for me to lose that stubborn body fat, which I did have to do for my last show. An hour. I never had to do an hour and a half of cardio ever. But now I'm in my 40s. I had to do an hour and a half of cardio every day to get ready for my show this past weekend. All right. And, I just learned like, hey, I'm older. My metabolism is maybe a little bit slower, not because I'm aging, but maybe just I'm older. So maybe I've lost some muscle. So things are a little bit more challenging now. I have a little bit more wear and tear on the body. Okay. I'm a little bit, I get tired a little bit more easier than I did in my 20s. So that all impacts how I get ready for a bodybuilding competition. But rather than throw in the towel and go, well, what's the point of doing this? I'm like, okay, well, this is where I'm at now. So this is what I got to do to get back to where I was. I might have to work a little harder. I might have to think outside the box, but I can get there. All right. So you need to learn to work with your genetics. And I've always been a firm believer that if someone has a strong work ethic, even if they don't have the best genetics, they can excel at anything they do in life. They truly can. That's why I always say, no matter what your job is, I truly believe you can make a lot of money at anything you do. You're a janitor, be a janitor. Be a janitor for a few years. Learn the ins and outs of the cleaning business. Learn how it works. Start networking. Start your own cleaning company. Boom. Now you got a business. You got a cleaning business. Now you're making money, more money, right? Maybe you hire another janitor. Maybe you hire 5 cleaners, 6 cleaners. You're hiring 100 cleaners. Okay. So I really think it's thinking outside the box with anything you do in life. I truly do believe that. So I don't believe that there's such a thing as bad genetics. I think it's just learning to work with your genetics, what you have, what's been given to you, and learning to work with it as opposed to against it. All right. A few more questions here. Nick, in your opinion, do people focus too much on supplementation because they don't want to fix their diet and training? Absolutely. That's a big one. I've had, God, so many people, especially the younger generation, who contact me for online coaching. And the number one thing they ask me are for drug protocols, anabolic steroids, peptides. What if I take this? If I take Ozempic, if I take Wegovy, what about taking testosterone? Will that help me build muscle? These are questions they're asking me, and these people haven't even been training in the gym consistently for 5 years. Nothing, right? They never really followed a clean diet consistently for at least a month. Yet they're already asking me about steroids. They're asking me about peptides. I'm like, if you just put in the work and you just went to the gym, you just lift the goddamn weights, you just ate the chicken and the rice as opposed to having the burger and the fries consistently, you'll get results. In my in my opinion, nobody should even be looking at anabolic steroids or peptides until they have at least minimum 5 years of consistent training and clean eating under their belt. I don't care how old you are. Okay, so if you're someone who just started lifting weights in your 30s, so you say you're 30, 31, and you've just been lifting weights now for 3 years, like, yeah, maybe I should go on steroids. I'm like, no, I'd wait 2 more years. And by the way, are you training 5, 6 days a week in the gym? Are you eating clean 90% of the time? Because if you're not, don't even think about it. Okay, you're wasting your time, waste the money. You need to put in the work. Okay, because you don't know what you can achieve naturally. You don't know what your receptors are going to achieve naturally. And what I mean by the receptors is when you start taking anabolic steroids, obviously they affect your receptors, right? So you're going to grow. But if you're someone who's like only been training for, let's say, a year, and you start taking anabolic steroids, you're almost like suppressing your natural gains. And I see a lot of these young kids who are like 18, 19. I had someone reach out to me last week who's 19 years old asking me about steroids. I'm like, you're 19 years old. You don't need testosterone. Your body's still producing testosterone at high levels. No need, no reason for it. You don't need it. Just train and eat. You're going to grow. All right. So, yeah, I feel like that's very common with the younger generation. I do have a few older clients who they try to fast track the results too. They don't want to do cardio, so they want to take fat burners. They don't want to go to the gym as much, so they want to take testosterone, they want to take masteron, they want to take trenbolone and all these things. I'm like, you're only training with weights 3 days a week. What's that going to do? You're not Dorian Yates. You can't work on like high intensity, low volume training. That won't work for you. Because first of all, you don't train with the utmost amount of intensity. All right. So you just train with low volume. So you stack low volume with low intensity and steroids, you're not going to really see results. You're just going to get health ramifications from that. So I do feel that that's very common. Again, I don't want to just single out the younger generation because there are people from my generation and older who do want to take shortcuts as well. And I just feel like it's not the way to go because these shortcuts are not going to equate to long-term success because any gains that you do make, you're going to lose because you yourself are not putting the work in, day out, period. All right. So I don't know if it's because we're in that kind of instant gratification era now where everyone wants something right now. Uber Eats, order it, comes within half an hour. Amazon, get your package the next day. So, when it comes to building a physique, it's not like that. You can't just push a button and you're going to get biceps, right? You can't just push a button on your phone and make a few changes on your app and all of a sudden, boom, you got this physique, unless, of course, you're filtering your photos. So you have to put in the work. You do. And I've always said if you can build a foundation naturally, sure. You've been doing that for 5, 6 years naturally, consistently, and you want to go down that route of peptides and anabolics, I say do it. As long as you educate yourself, sure. Understand the risks, understand the ramifications that you're taking, okay, and potential years off your life, but you're an adult, you can make those choices. But I will never here, I'll never promote anabolic steroids usage to anyone, especially someone who hasn't even been training for 5 years consistently. So to answer that question, yeah, in my opinion, too many people focus too much on the supplements, on the drugs, and not enough on the nutrition and the training. And unfortunately, I don't think that's getting any better. In fact, I think it's getting worse. So, that's the whole thing why I started my YouTube channel. I have my Instagram platform, my Facebook platform, my LinkedIn platform. I really try to really promote that being fit and healthy is something that you want to do for life. It's not a short-term fix, it's a long-term fix. So you have long-term goals. You can have short-term goals, but when it comes to creating an aesthetically pleasing physique and having good health, that should be a long-term goal. All right. Okay. Last question. Nick, I saw Haley's post and she said you only trained for your competition for 2 weeks. How did you get so shredded in only 2 weeks? Yeah, so for those that don't know, I just competed this past weekend at a bodybuilding competition here in Vancouver, British Columbia. I don't want to get into too much details about the competition because I will be talking about that on my Coaching Reality episode coming out this Wednesday about how I prepped for the show. I will touch on this though because you're asking the question now. So what she meant by the 2 week process was the diet was 2 weeks. Before that 2 week process, I was still doing cardio. In the back of my mind, I felt I was going to get ready for something, whether it was a bodybuilding competition, potential like MMA fight, whatever it may have been. I wanted to do something, and I wanted to do something for multiple reasons. I put up a post the other day on my Instagram explaining why I came back to bodybuilding. It was more for myself. I was told when I had my appendix burst back in 2020 that they told me I'm not going to be able to do any abdominal work ever again. And then back when in 2021, when I had my grand mal seizure, I was told that I wouldn't be able to lift anything heavy again. And then in 2025, when I just past summer, when I had my inguinal hernia surgery, the surgeon told me that I'll never be able to squat, deadlift, or bench press again. So I wanted to prove it to myself that I could do those things. And, and that's one of the reasons why I came back and wanted to get on stage again and bring the best physique that I could. And I've had a lot of people message me who've seen some of the photos. The professional photos aren't out yet, but people who've seen photos that Haley took and posted on Instagram and really compliment me and say, "Wow, this is one of your best looks." And I really do appreciate that. I don't know if I agree that was one of my best looks, but I'll take it considering that I only really did diet for 2 weeks for the show. And I'm going to go into that as to what I did with my diet. But you have to remember that I pretty much live and breathe this lifestyle 24/7, 365 days a year. I go out for brunch or for dinner once, maybe twice a week. I stick to my diet. I still use a food scale year round. Okay. Not because I'm getting ready for a show. I use one year round. I portion all my meals. Okay. So very rarely do I cheat on my diet. I train every day. I don't take days off. So I always try to stay within striking distance of what I feel is a competition worthy physique. All right. So those last 2 weeks that Haley was referring to was more the diet. And the diet was a little extreme because I was probably a little behind schedule to get ready for the stage. All right. So to give you an idea, I took my weight from 200 pounds on the dot down to 186. I think it was 186.5 for the weigh-in. So I lost 14 pounds in 14 days. All right, which I wouldn't recommend anyone do. There's a lot of restriction going on there, taking out carbohydrates, taking out fats, high protein, lots of cardio, manipulating your water, manipulating your sodium. So it's not the healthiest way to lose weight, but it was for competition. So I'm going to go more into details as to what I did to get ready for that show. And I'm going to go more into details as to why I wanted to come back and compete again. But for those that don't know, I did have a fairly good showing. I mean, I walked out of there with 5 first place medals, one second place medal, and I won the Mutant Award, which they told me I was the most conditioned guy on stage, which was a huge compliment for me at 40 years old, being more conditioned than a lot of these guys in their 20s. So it made the old guy feel pretty good. So, but like I said, not in my opinion one of my best looks, but I haven't seen the professional photos yet. I've only seen the photos that were taken from people in the stands, which are nice to see. But it'll be interesting to see when the professional photos come out what I actually look like. And I'll post more of those up on my Instagram platform when they do come up, as they come up, as people tag me. I'll put them up in my stories, put them up in a few posts. But I want to save what I did for the prep for my coaching reality series, which comes out, or my coaching reality episode, I should say, which comes out this coming Wednesday, actually. So stay tuned for that. And yeah, if you have any questions related to your nutritional plan, workout program, supplements you're currently taking, not taking, or considering, you know what to do. Contact me anytime, DM me, email me. I'm always here to help in any way that I can. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A. This episode will be going up on Monday, March the 30th. And you know what I said, if you have any questions, supplement related, diet related, training related, send them my way. I'm always happy to help. And even if it's just a quick question, you're not too sure about something, I want to help people. That's what I'm here to do. So that's what I'm trying to use this platform to do. Yes, I work with people online. I work with people in-house, but I love talking shop. I love talking bodybuilding. I learn things from people too all the time, right? So I'm always here to help. And I really do appreciate all the support and feedback that I receive from each and every single one of you. I do super appreciate all the DMs I've continued to receive on Instagram this week from my showing this past weekend. And I promise I will respond to each and every DM that I've received. I'm getting a lot of them. So I really do appreciate all that and all the congratulations. It was my last show. I am officially retired now. I will not be competing again. You have my word on that. So I am done. But I am going to go into more details about what I did getting ready for this show and why I'm done on Wednesday's episode of Coaching Reality. Anyway, that's it for this week's No Filter Q&A, and I will see you all next week. Bye for now.